Welcome to Musings with me at Butterfly Effect for Happiness. I'm Lisa, and I hope wherever this finds you in your day, it generates critical thinking and discussion for those you love and care about. In this episode, I'm musing over the topic of NLP windows of communication. NLP being neuro-linguistic programming. Neuro being brain, linguistic being language, and programming being rewiring the tracks in your brain and what the model of the world is for you and how that affects you. And that's a very light explanation. By that I mean very light. It's much more in depth, and you can look into that for yourselves. So anyway, what I wanted to talk about today, which I do cover for clients who come and see me, is around the windows of communication. And communication is such a huge aspect of our lives. It affects our relationships, it affects our work, it affects how we engage with children, with our friends, with our family, with colleagues, with people at the store. It affects so much, and the way in which we communicate. So what I often liken to communication for people, and to get people to understand that your stuff affects the way you communicate with other people. So your model of the world, all your previous experiences affect your communication. How you communicate, what you do and what you do not communicate, and how somebody else receives that. And that makes a huge difference to how a topic can be discussed or not, as the case may be. So if you think of, here is a window and here is you, here is another window and here is the other person. So assuming that this is only a two-way communication, because we're not going to get into like all the others, but you can transfer this idea onto a group situation, which is bigger. So if you think of, here is the window, here's the windows, and here's the person, and here's another person. On this window, it is covered in all the stuff that you have experienced through your life. It is covered in all your perceptions, your beliefs, your values, all your experiences. And this one for the other person is the same. It's covered in their experiences. It's covered in the quagmire of their life, so shall we say, or the rainbow of their life, depending on what is over their window. What have they experienced? What have they been through? What are their beliefs? What have their parents and friends and family taught them, and what has become the painting or the covering on their windows? And so then you've got two windows with something all over the windows. They are not clear windows. Kids might have slightly clearer windows or much clearer windows depending on their age. So they've got less to filter through. They have the issue of being able to verbalize what they are experiencing or what they want to say. We usually don't, but we've got a whole pile going on underneath. So if we want to imagine, and for those of you only listening, hold your hands up in front of you as though you have got your palms together, and then pull them about 20 to 25 centimeters apart, even with your shoulders. And then imagine there's a little person standing behind the back of each hand, and each hand represents a window. So the person is behind the hand on each side, and they are trying to speak through those windows. So then imagine that person speaks through that window, so through their beliefs, through their experiences, through their values, and all of those, all this stuff. And then they've got to communicate through your window and all your stuff, all your experiences, all your values and beliefs and things like that to get to you. So even in that first step of communication, it has to go through two windows which are covered in your experiences, are covered in your beliefs, are covered in your values. So then the person on the other side has to communicate, has to receive that in the way that they received it. So they not only received what you said through your beliefs and values and experiences, they then had to receive that through their beliefs, values and experiences. And if somebody's been through something big, that's really going to affect the way they hear something that you're saying to them. They then need to process that on the other side of that window and then communicate it back through their window and your window, and how you are going to receive that information is not necessarily how they intended it to be received. But because of our windows, because of how we have to speak through our windows and then through theirs, that impacts the way we communicate. It impacts the way we hear. It impacts the way we speak to others. Think of how many times you've bitten your tongue because you are afraid to say something to somebody because of what happened last time. So instead of speaking up, you don't say anything. Maybe you always speak up because in the past you never spoke up. So those are therefore your experiences. Maybe you have a belief around speaking up or not speaking up. Maybe you have a belief around the value of women or men or children. Children should be seen and not heard. Other people have got other beliefs and values around that. So what you think and what you expect and how you communicate that is so majorly impacted by your values, your experiences, your beliefs, and the way in which you communicate. And I find that a lot with parents and children. And so a lot of people are coming to me as clients who are having issues with their children. And it often is about the communication and the way in which these parents are communicating with their children and the way in which the children are communicating with the parents. Because how many of us have been taught to communicate in a way that's effective? Really effective, clear communication. How many of us have been taught to sit in a space of listening? Most often, and for me, with my generation, which was the best generation, by the way, because I grew up through the 80s, which was the best music. No beliefs, values, and experience impact here. We were not taught to communicate in a way that was about listening and staying in a space of actively listening to other people. It was very much about, and this is not a reflection on the parents that I had or the people around me, even though that is probably where I learned to communicate. It is where I learned to communicate, but you know what I mean. We learned what we learned because of who we learned it from, and that's the same for each generation. So for those of us who did grow up through the 80s, who were teenagers in the 80s, we haven't learned the same style of communication a lot of the time, and I'm generalizing, of course, to be able to be in a space of listening to our children. We were taught that you tell your children what to do. Communication was not so much two-way. You will do that because I said. No, you can't do that because I said. And I know I was guilty of this myself with my own daughter. My rule was, that's what I said, so you do it. There is not negotiation. And I still feel that to some extent there is not negotiation with a 2-year-old. Sort of. But that's a whole other conversation. So we need to actively listen to our children We need to be in a space of listening to listen, to understand, to empathize, to be there for them to dump their stuff. Not all the time. I'm not saying this is a standard practice of this is always how it will be. We do need to do more listening as parents and adults to our children. We need to hold space for them to vent. And I say to clients, parents, clients, even the teens, because they are often in situations where they are listening to friends. Imagine a big bowl sitting in front of you. Big bowl sitting in front of you. And this is it's a vessel. And the person on the other side of that vessel is pouring into that bowl. You do not have to take on what is in that bowl. You get to choose. You get to go with your teen or whoever it is that is tipping into that bowl in front of you. You know what? I don't need that stuff. I'm going to tip that out. But I will still sit here and I will listen. You are holding space for them to tip their worries in. And maybe a better way of asking is, what do you need me to do with this information? Do you just need me to listen? Or do you need me to solve it? Or do you need me to help you problem solve? So think about those things when you are in communication with your team. It doesn't have to be that you solve it every time. It doesn't have to be I told you so conversations. As much as we really want to say, I was trying to tell you this. Hold it. Just hold it for a bit longer and see what your team comes up with. See what your kids come up with. Sometimes they'll find their own solutions, and it's in the speaking to each other that we find our own solutions. And remember that they are speaking to you through their window. It might not be as covered as our own windows because they haven't been on this planet for as long as we have, but they are speaking to you through their filtered window. Keep it in mind when you're listening to them. Keep it in mind that they're learning. Keep it in mind that they're processing. And all you have to do sometimes is just listen. I so hope this finds you in a space of well-being. I hope that if you are beginning your day, that it is about to be amazing. I hope that if you are about to end your day, that it has been amazing. And if not, pick up a stick that makes you feel better. Find something that allows you to feel better in your own space, fills your own cup, and allows you to be in a space of responding as opposed to reacting, and able to have a little bit more of a think about how you're going to communicate with those you love. Take care.